Are single-sex schools better than mixed ones? 0207 862 2222 is the number. According to a Sunday Times league table, both the top-performing private and state schools in England are all girls' schools. Now, the blue ones on the table are private, the yellow ones are the state schools. In fact, 11 out of the top 15 are single-sex schools. Is this proof that they are better for a child's education? Where do you sit on this debate? Geoff, I'll start with you.
Well, I was at a mixed school from the age of 11 to about the age of 14. Not doing well there. I mean, using the phrase distracted sounds like a loaded thing, but as hormones start raging, girls being around, I wasn't great at focusing, it must be said. And then...
But you think it was the indirect relationship?
I'm talking about a personal... I regret saying it now, but like, it was a personal response to that change, you know, about how you felt becoming a teenager. The moment, literally, you got me to a single-sex school, shout going out to Rutledge School in Wimbledon, by the way, which now actually might be mixed, I think. The focus that I had was immediate, and it was different. There was a clarity. There was a different tone there as well that spoke to me more as a young male, that made more sense to me. There was more rigour, there was more discipline. There was just more things that made sense to me. And I know that when it comes to things, you know, particularly in Key Stage 4, I would say, you know, it's such an important point, and there are learning differences at that age between boys and girls. I wonder if you split them out, whether or not you could really focus on necessary developmental areas. Well,
when you look at the top league of schools, the league tables, I mean, the kind of proof is in the pudding. The single-sex schools are academically very good.
Yeah, now, I come from a point of view where in Wales, the only single-sex schools are private schools. Mm-hmm. So all the state schools are mixed. I personally went to an all-girls school and it was a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. I went from a mixed school to an all-girls school. I had a much better in experience, if you like, in the mixed school. Life is not segregated. We don't come out of school and into an all-woman workplace or into an all-male workplace. Or life is not segregated. I think boys gain from being with girls. I think girls will make them pull up their socks and do a bit better. Boys are, by nature, more lazy academically and don't achieve as much. And girls will give them that challenge to maybe do more. I think girls not being in a mixed school are prevented from doing what we would think of traditionally male sports, like football and the kinds of activity which boys like doing. In a girls' school, that's seen as being not necessary. So I just think it's a better experience.
But actually, in an all-girls school, girls tend to do more sports because they don't have to fear the getting sweaty and getting...
The body consciousness.
And the body consciousness.
I get that, but I think it's mostly girl kinds of activities rather than...
But that goes the other way, though, because when I was at a school and it was mixed, they did like just stuff that I just was not interested in. I was like, I just want to do rugby, cricket, football, and I was doing like world dance and weird sort of variations on hockey that I haven't seen since.
Bit of Zumba, perhaps.
Well, the equivalent of whatever Zumba was.
I love a bit of Zumba
in the early 90s. So it really spoke to me, and it was interesting what you said there. I don't know if boys are lazy academically, but I would say that, you know, one thing that those stats bear out is the ongoing difference in achievement, which at some point I hope the government or somebody will focus on. But there's another element as well. Is like it's not really. I wonder if it's girls' job to raise boys up. They should be focusing on their own achievement.
I just think it's a more natural environment. It's normal. Well, it's what society...
It's certainly more natural, but at that stage and that age and at that time where hormones are running riot, maybe separating out the sexes and allowing them to be who they are, it is better, and clearly academically allows them to achieve more. Valerie from Shropshire, what's your view when it comes to single-sex schools? Do you think they're better for children?
Well, they certainly were in the past. I'm 80 now, and I went to a single-sex grammar school in the 50s in Birmingham. And I didn't enjoy it particularly. The teachers were old-fashioned, very working-class school. And but I did leave with my O-levels at 15, whereas my daughters, who went to a co-ed school from the age of 13, seemed to have a problem to get male teachers to listen to them. And they certainly said they have the problem with boys, you know, in corridors with hands-up skirts and things. And they got most of their qualifications after they left school. So from my perspective, and I've been a teacher as well, and I would think I think it's the attitude of the staff often as well.
I wonder, Valerie, as somebody who went to a single-sex school, did you find, because I suppose the query, because it is an unnatural environment, we don't segregate in the workplace and that sort of thing, and neither we should.
No,
Nobody's
I know,
advocating
but
for
from
that.
the age of 11 and where you're doing work, perhaps that's different. I know my one daughter said they had to take a posse of girls to their male science teacher to please let some of them answer questions rather than all the boys at the front.
Valerie, that is so unbelievably sad that that happened, and hopefully that isn't happening now. However, the hands up the skirt and the sexual abuse issues are definitely on the rise at the moment, which is a real worry.
It seems to be the same. No, this was only last year we talked about this.
Oh, sorry, okay.
And so they told me for the first time. I never knew at the time.
Right, okay, but it had happened a while ago. The question I really want to ask you, Valerie, is going to an all-girls school, do you think it made you sociably more interested in the opposite sex? Did it make you more obsessed with boys and going to parties?
Well, yes, I think at 15, most of us grammar school girls used to see boys older than us with motorbikes, nothing naughty, and they were very nice boys. You know, but yes, I was married at 18, so I think I was mature. I wouldn't say I had any problems with the opposite sex.
No, I'm not saying that you have more problems. I went to a single-sex school for one day just to try it out, and I definitely didn't want to go after that because I just found all the girls incredibly obsessed with boys. That's all they seemed to talk about, and I just wasn't interested. I
don't think we were so much in those days. If we did, we didn't get a chance because a lot of the mistresses, as they all were single-sex ladies then, came from a public school era where most of the girls at the school were from very working-class backgrounds.
Valerie.
But we were interested in the new music.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And we all dyed our hair.
Aren't all young people, Valerie? Thank you so much for your call. A wealth of experience there. Now, Geoff, you were also a teacher. Were you a teacher at a single-sex school or a co-ed?
A variety. I did notice that the boys' schools, I found it easier to just strike a line with a class, if you know what I mean. Maybe
it was just boys.
It can come intuitively from understanding. I did seem to work better at boys' schools, but that's because there's a general lack of male teachers. So you know, they tend to respond quite well to male role models. But I'm just wondering in this conversation whether or not people are worried about the integration and the social element, whether or not you could just teach. I'm sure there are schools doing this. You teach certain subjects, single sex, break time, lunchtime, they interact with each other. But it's so important in Key Stage 4. If boys are still, I think, ahead on maths, then you could focus on girls for maths. Boys across the world are struggling with reading, whether or not you could look at certain subjects and say, we teach this single sex to get the outcomes, but they still socialise in their break times.
It's an interesting idea. Patricia from Hampshire, what do you think about single-sex schools? Do you think they're the way to go?
Well, I said I went to a convent school with just girls, and you just focused on work and then sport. We played a lot of tennis, a lot of hockey, and the nuns were strict when you were in the class, and I don't think it did me any harm at all. I did quite well.
What about sociably, Patricia? Did you still interact with boys of your age?
Yes, there was a Catholic boys' school in Portsmouth. We were in Waterlooville, just outside, and there was an annual dance, but the boys they didn't want to dance, and the girls just were separate, even at the annual dance thing that we had.
Patricia, that's not sounding very good, to be fair. No, you're not selling it to me. You meet the...
They were very immature.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose that's probably fair at a co-ed school as well, but I don't think it would be as segregated at a dance if you had been interacting more often during the year, potentially. No. Patricia, thank you for your call. Sarah from Oxfordshire, single-sex schools, do you think they are better for children?
No, I wouldn't say so. I come from a girls' school sort of background, and, yeah, lots of bullying, lots of corruption. I went to private school when I was in primary school and state school in my secondary years. And, yeah, I went through a lot of picking on, and teachers don't really care. And they don't really put your education first. That's my experience personally. I went to school in West London.
I find that really surprising because girls' schools do statistically outperform all other schools, really. So the fact that your school wasn't that interested. The bullying element, however, I do wonder whether that's far more prevalent at a single-sex, potentially even girls' school more than boys' school. But then you're weighing up, Sarah, the difference between getting bullied by your female peers or having to deal with sexual advances from males in your classroom, or the very worst sort of sexual abuse, which we're seeing becoming more prevalent in schools.
Yeah, no, I do agree, but I'm your age, so when I was in school, I mean, I know of friends that went to mixed schools. That wasn't really an issue at that time. It was more like jealousy and just picking on girls for no reason. Like, I got picked on because of my appearance a lot, and I had to deal with a lot. That in later life has affected my mental health, but mental health wasn't spoken about then, and teachers weren't so caregiving, I'd say. And obviously that then has an impact on your education. Like, I got good GCSEs, but, you know, the duty of care could have been better. And I've seen that through the private sector and the state sector. And I don't know, I think schools have changed now. Like, I've got a young daughter now and she goes to a mixed school because I'd never put her through that experience ever.
Makes sense. What I'm hearing actually in this whole discussion is actually different people will operate differently at different schools,
I think
and maybe different characters need different environments.
That sounds like an overall negative experience
Hugely.
at a school, you know, which is incredibly regrettable to hear. But, you know, whether or not that means that the principles of single-sex and co-ed are compromised, it just sounds like a bad school where somebody was particularly let down.
What's interesting is we did a story yesterday about whether Prince George should go to a state school. Now, Prince George is probably likely to go to a private school. He's probably likely to board because William and Kate both boarded at different schools and enjoyed it. The difference is William went to a single-sex school and Kate went to a co-ed school and is much more pro-co-ed. So it will be interesting to see between the dynamics of those two what they decide for George. I think Eton might be closer than...
Yeah, they make it... It'd be amazing if he was just at parents' evening. You go, is that the first in line on the phone there? Sorry, mate, you're going to have to wait. Actually, I've got the 10:05 spot, so...
OK, well, whatever they decide, I hope it's the best for Prince George. OK.